Imagine a space where everything is intimately connected to everything else. There is light that's pervasive. So any point in that space is intimately connected with any other point instantaneously. Now imagine that this space projects something of itself into a space of a different nature, and the nature in this space is that of fragmentation of past, present, future. The question is, what kind of physical constant can be used to create a space of this nature? So we in fact have such a physical constant, and this is the speed of light, which has been computed to be 186,000 miles per second. And this speed of light, since it's finite, implies that light takes a finite amount of time to get from A to B, and therefore implicit in that there's a sense of past, present, and future. Being that there's a sense of past, present, and future, there's a automatic fragmentation that takes place. So there's a separation between any point in space in this space, and plus there's a sense of fragmentation and isolation. And further, if we consider C to be an upper limit that defines a space, the inverse of C will give us insight into the lower limit. And here 1 over C is proportional to something that's called the Planck's constant, which gives us insight into the quantization of energy, or the minimum amount of energy that has to exist before it can meaningfully express itself. And 1 over C essentially can be thought of as a device by which matter can express itself without dissipating. So therefore there's a material existence that is allowed to come into being because of this lower limit of 1 over C. So what we have, just by the operation of the finiteness of the speed of light, we have a space that is set up that's fragmented, that's isolated, that has past, present, and future implicit in it, and that has a material existence that is meaningful and that can be built up. Now imagine different kinds of projection from this initial space. So we may imagine that we have a projection such that the speed of light, so if we think of speed of light over here, let's call this C fragmentation, which we know is 186,000 miles per second. If we think about the speed of light in this environment where it's pervasive, where it connects everything, where there's a sense of oneness, we may say that C in this space of oneness is infinite. So the speed of light is infinite. So if we set a bound over here, so here's C oneness, which is an infinite miles per second, and then we have C in the fragmented space, we may suppose there's a projection into a different kind of a space in which we have the speed of light such that it moves from a reality of being at this upper level and then gradually coming down to this lower level. Then what we would experience in this space is perhaps an initial sense of oneness where everything is intimately connected and everything is known right here, right now, to a gradual sense of fragmentation in which materiality can then take place. Now imagine the inverse of this. So we have another projected space that has the following behavior in terms of the speed of light. So we have C fragmentation, we have C of oneness, and instead of going this direction, it moves in this direction. So here we could hypothesize that this space, this projected space, is one in which evolution takes place, and we move from a sense of material fragmentation, isolation, and past, present, future to perhaps a sense of material oneness, connectedness, and integration with light. Now, we can also project, there are infinite number of projections if we look at light in different ways, but let's consider one more case. So we have a case over here where we have C fragmentation, C oneness, and we have kind of a sinusoidal wave. So imagining that we have a space in which the speed of light fluctuates, and it fluctuates in this sinusoidal manner such that it approaches, its lower limit is CF, and it begins to approach the upper limit of infinity. So I would hypothesize that such a space is perhaps what we experience in the quantum world, in the quantum level, because what we see here is a kind of a strangeness or weirdness in which we have a dual wave particle phenomena. So we may see things materially, and then it becomes more like a wave, it gets dispersed. But it makes sense if we think about the fluctuation of the lower limit of a space, which is 1 over c. So the upper limit is c, and of course c is moving from 186,000 miles per second to infinity. And if you take the inverse of that, then basically you have a higher level of quantization, which we know is Planck's constant in this space. And as we approach infinity, then this becomes a fraction of itself, and becomes smaller and smaller. And as it becomes smaller and smaller, the basically quantization of energy becomes smaller and smaller, so that matter becomes more and more dispersed. So we begin to see things as waves rather than as a particle. And so it's perhaps the hypothesis is that perhaps when we're looking at the realm of the atom, or certainly at the quantum level of things, then what we're really seeing is the interplay of multiple levels of reality, starting from the fragmented reality where c is a constant at 186,000 miles, to something beyond that where the speed of light, or the speed of that transmission, is something very different. And this creates a number of weird phenomena, what's known as weird, such as entanglement, where, for example, one particle is intimately connected to another, where things are intimately connected instantaneously without the sense of past, present, and future. So what we can see stepping back is that just from the variation in a simple constant c, we really have, in effect, a infinite number of projections that are possible. We've just looked at 4 projections here, but there are an infinite number of projections, and the question really is, when we see phenomena around us in the world, then what is that telling us about how different levels that are typified by different constants, if you will, might be playing or integrating together?